Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm very excited to have Abe Dyck on once again. We've had him on before, as you know. Now you get to see his face in the flesh. So thank you, Abe, for joining us today. We're going to be talking about Aduro Clean Technologies and what they've been up to. So Abe, thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure, my pleasure. I know my audience enjoys having you on and learning more about what's going on with Aduro. It's one of the few companies I've purchased this year, so you guys have made the cut, and I'm excited to to spread the message. So let's get started with the conference in Mexico. Can you tell me about what happened over there and what that means for you guys moving forward?
Absolutely. So the conference in Mexico is the Green Expo conference, and it was coordinated through the Canadian Trade Service. And so we were one of a select group of Canadian companies that went and presented, at the Canadian Trade Commission's booth. Part of the program is the Trade Commission sets up 8 one-on-one meetings with interested parties in Mexico. For us, that was great. It's a good opportunity to go and meet directly with interested companies and municipalities, nonprofits who are looking to address plastic waste in particular. As it turned out, we had 14 meetings. So we were the star of the group of companies, Canadian companies that were there. More people want to hear the story about what we are planning on doing and what we are currently doing with bringing plastics into circularity.
That's amazing. And you were in Mexico. Like, come on. You got the beach,
the conference is actually in Mexico City, and the interest is coming from all over the place. Maybe a little bit of a profile of some of the companies and people that we met were the Ministry of Environment for one of the larger states there. One of them was also a large landfill operator, so they are currently receiving all of this waste material, and they are doing some level of recycling. But they're looking at how do they derive more value out of that material. We also had a Fortune 500 company, can't name them, but who are interested in, what can we do with the plastic once it's converted? How do we bring it, is it a product that can be used to go and make plastics again? And there are some companies that are interested in how does this get converted into a transportation fuel, for example. So out of those 14 companies, a lot of interest and across the spectrum on what the possibility there could be. And for us, we've got a country manager with Humberto Parra that's located in Mexico. He's doing a great job of making those connections and progressing the conversation about how to move from where we are today, which is coming out of bench scale and our technology, and then doing some early stage collaboration on with these companies, like the customer trials program that we're talking about. How do we engage them early on? Maybe work on a small engagement with their material, their problem material, with the goal, of course, for us to expand that relationship once we are ready to bring the technology to commercialization.
Nice, very cool. Now, bringing it a little bit closer to home, how is the conference in Alberta?
Yeah, the conference in Alberta was the oil sands show. So this is our return trip to Fort McMurray, and specifically the audience there is looking at oil sands and what we are able to do with our technology to convert heavy crude to a product that is more fungible. So essentially, maybe your audience would love a little bit of an update on what we're doing with bitumen. So
for sure.
Bitumen is essentially a long chain hydrocarbon that is naturally forming in nature, right? We're just pumping it out of the ground. Canadian crude has got very complex asphaltene content in the crude. This is nature's polymer, as our CTO likes to call it, and versus plastics, which are engineered polymers. So really, when we're building plastics, we're engineering them to be long, complex molecules. Asphaltenes in nature are those long, complex molecules. And so in what we do with bitumen, the heavy crude, is to cut those carbon-carbon bonds, make that product fungible, ready for pipeline pumping. What we do there is offset the requirement for diluent blending, And, as some of our testing has shown, we are able to improve the product specification, reduction of metals, improvement in TAN and cetane levels, improve the product generally. And so we're at the stage where we are now moving out of the lab, as we've said before, and moving to that R2 reactor and doing client trials with that. So, that probably leads me to that next press release that we had, which was with Prospera. So
yeah. So I was going to say it's a perfect segue to the LOI with Prospera. So let's dive in a little bit into that again, what that means, and how big is that, and how much of an exciting time is that for you guys?
Well, it's great. We really enjoyed our engagement with Sam and the team at Prospera. They are a small producer, relatively small. They're producing upwards of 5,000 barrels is their target currently, and they keep on growing through acquisition. And they have also got a low API crude. And what that means for us is that's a good target client for us. Somebody who's small, agile, who we can work with to do this early stage, long duration testing with. So we will work with them on a 3-phase engagement. The front end is evaluation of their crude. We'll run it through our R1 reactor first, and from the R1 reactor, we'll then move into a continuous flow R2 reactors. We'll work with them on an economic model, identify where, the benefits that we are seeing, are they also seeing them the same way? The amount of diluent avoidance that we're projecting, are they seeing it the same way? And then from there, we'll move on to phase 2, which is a scale up of that, which we call our R3 reactor, which is 50 barrel a day size. And at that scale, what we'll be doing then is looking at some of the balance of plant requirements. So how do we treat water? What are we doing with the excess metals that are actually dropping out? I forgot to mention that that's actually another one of those benefits, is that we remove metals in our process. And then phase 3 of this engagement is, and if we all agree that we want to move to phase 3, would then to build a 3,000 barrel a day facility to be determined site that Prospera and Aduro will identify to construct and operate a commercial unit. And so we've set it up in a stage-gated process so that we're all in agreement at each stage that we still want to move ahead. So for Aduro-wise, it's important that has early stage engagement with customer, the type of customer that we're interested in. And it it provides some revenue to us as well. And that's part of the reason why we're doing these early stage client trials.
It's validation, right? It's validation. And
exactly.
Yeah.
They're seeing it firsthand. Their engineers will be working with our engineers on site, seeing the results, validating what we're doing. And then maybe course correcting in some situations where we may have made some assumptions, but they have a real lived experience, and that's the value that they're contributing to our process. In our press release, we also identified that we have a confidential client that we're still continuing our work with. This is a client that's in Alberta that engaged with us when we were still at our R1 reactor stage. And some of our deliverable is still to run their material through the R2 reactor. So we'll be beginning to do that in November, December timeframe, and then from there move on into doing the work that we're doing with Prospera.
Again, I'm just going to ask on a personal level, what are your expectations of how this plays out?
Well, our expectations is that we don't run into hiccups, scale-up hiccups, which of course can always be there. But essentially, we're at a stage where we've demonstrated the chemistry can work. Now it's about building the rest of the equipment and scaling it up, getting larger throughput in going through there. And as we're getting the large volume throughput in there, we can work with other clients or potential customers like Prospera. We can collaborate or demonstrate to other potential customers and build that pipeline of projects for bitumen upgrading. So that's our expectation, and this work with Prospera helps to facilitate moving that ahead quite quickly.
Fantastic. What can you tell us about the Bitumen Unit? Can you tell us anything about that?
The Bitumen Unit?
Yeah.
Well, where we're at with it currently, we're assembling the final parts.
Okay.
We've suffered the supply chain lags that everybody else has suffered as well.
Yeah.
Just by example, a bitumen pump that was supposed to take 8 weeks to deliver has taken nearly 30 weeks to deliver. So it's things like that have delayed us a little bit just on getting the parts. But that has also given us some additional time with our engineering partners at Raleigh and at Exergy to be able to tweak a little bit more of the stuff that we've been working on, and working with Rock Technical on some of the ergonomics on how we would be working with the reactor. The reactor is the R2 reactor is going to be located at our London lab facility that we announced. Construction there is progressing well. We're at the final stages of a final permit for some HVAC work that we're having to do in order to accommodate running these types of processes in that type of environment. So that work is moving ahead. We should be able to, maybe January, start doing tours and having some people come and have a look at what we are doing. And we welcome that opportunity. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's a great way to start the new year with a bang. So it's good. Nice. Most recent PR, the flow plastic reactor for customer trials, ready mid-November. Tell us more about that.
Yes, as we said, our focus early on in development of the company wasn't on plastics. Plastics really has come the darling in the room. It's where we're getting all the inbound traffic from inquiries. And so we have, as we've said over the last year, we've focused on what we're going to be able to do with plastic. And so we've taken a lot of the learning that we had originally on bitumen and modified the reactor to receive plastics. And really, if you think about bitumen, it's a liquid intake. Plastics is a solid intake. And so we've where the reactor is at currently is targeting mid-November for all the parts to come together for us to do final assembly. And the same thing with plastics. Plastic is going to be going, that unit is going to be going to the London lab facility. We've already announced our engagement with Switch Energy for us to run agricultural plastic waste through that reactor. So that's our first engagement on the client trial side. I can say that, there are a number of other potential clients, and we're in discussions with them about running their material. And, these clients are both from the material side, but also on the offtake side. So we have a number of conversations that are interested in what is the quality of offtake. In particular, there are customers that are interested in circular naphtha, the finished product that can go back into a naphtha cracker for the production of new plastics. And we've also got customers, as I said, in Mexico that are very much interested on the fuel side. And so we're going to be looking at those types of engagements, and hopefully we can make some announcements in the next couple of months on who those collaborators may be.
Fantastic.
Crossing the T's, dotting the I's, making sure that we have our engagement locked down, and then we'll be making some announcements.
Oh, that's cool. That's something to look forward to for the people. So that's awesome. That's good stuff. Speaking of the people, a lot of people, it's like, obviously with small caps, like you got to be ready for companies to raise money, and that's just the reality of the space. However, some companies do it in a more responsible way. Some companies do it in a more shareholder friendly way. Some companies do it in a more purpose oriented way, let's just call it. So I just wanted to kind of dig into what your thought process was, as well as the team's, into why you conducted the raises as you did this year.
Yeah. So we brought in some money in I think it was the April timeframe, at 70 cents. And that was really, we needed a raise. We were making quite a bit of spend on building a lab, and we've now got two R2 reactors, and we're going to be operating those. And we are also growing the team, bringing some more talent on board. So we needed to raise some money to be able to execute on what we are planning to work on. In July, we did a raise that was a little bit more opportune. That was at 72 cents. There were interested parties that were excited about what we're doing and wanted to get on board. And we took that time to bring in some additional capital. So that positions us really well to be able to execute on what we want to do with these two R2 reactors. Helps us to close on buying all of that equipment, those long lead item equipment, but also some of the equipment that we need in the London lab that we're building. So gas chromatographs and I'm not going to try to remember all the names of the different equipment. There's a lot of analytical equipment that we use, and so instead of sending it out for testing every time, we'll be able to do it in-house. And so we've purchased some of that capital equipment for us to have an in-house lab. So it was a good time for us to bring in some of that money to be able to work more efficiently by having that equipment ourselves. And so that was the purpose of those two. We feel that we're in a good place right now. And I think we're quite successful in being able to raise this money during not a really good market. And
understatement.
If the shareholders are listening, we're so appreciative of the patience many of you have got and the confidence that you've got in what we're doing. And some of that vote of confidence in that 72% raise, that was excellent. It tells us we're on the right path, and we're here to execute, and we're internally super excited about what we're capable of doing with this chemistry. And every time we're having conversations with, some big players in the space who understand the chemistry that is needed here, and when they're getting excited about that, it tells us we're in the right place for circular economy and for chemical recycling space that is developing so quickly. So.
Mm-hmm. Final question. I know the background. I know your background. I know, Ofers, who's the CEO of Aduro. But for the audience, do you mind just giving, a 1 to 2 minute kind of just rundown of what this company means to you guys and how long you've been at it, essentially?
Sure.
Yeah.
What it means to us. I mean, we were under the radar for a long time. I mean, we were at Western University for about 10 years, and it really all incubated from Ofer identifying some research that was being done, and it was sat dormant for a little while. He and Mark Trigstad, our CTO, had a look at that and at the patent and at the work that was being done. Decided to do a little bit of investigative work on it. This is where we brought in Anil Jawar, who's our chief scientist now. And he was at Western University. We engaged in some initial grant funding to do some investigation on the chemistry. Mark had some ideas about how to pivot it away from that original patent work that was being done. And, as Anil was doing the work, discovered indeed there was some novelty there. Quickly set about writing some patents, making some applications on those patents. Had a welcome surprise in that we weren't infringing on anybody else's work in a very crowded petrochemical
very welcome
space.
Surprise, yeah.
Right? That tells you that, wait a minute, we should be doing some more work here. And so we set about applying for more grants, built that team in London, and Neil pretty much came on full-time doing work at the lab at Western, along with Dr. Paul Charpentier, and set about just investigating the work on what we are now calling hydrochemolytic technology. At the time, we were pivoting around and also we were working on some renewables as feedstocks, and that formed a lot of information or a lot of knowledge on what was actually happening in the chemistry. And then more recently, I say recent, but that's really around 3 years ago now, that we had a look at plastics and rubber and some of these other types of feedstocks that today are where all the attention is. what to do with these low value waste hydrocarbons. And as one of the other peer companies likes to say, these are surface carbons. We don't need to extract them out of the ground. They're already on surface. We just need to identify the value of them and bring them circular. And so if we can grab more of this, current 9% plastics that are out there, how do we bring that into circularity and reuse those carbons? So that's the core team that started the work. And since then, we built that London lab skill set there and the team there. I think today we're at 16 people across the country. Across the company. Can't say across the country because we're, as I mentioned, Humberto's in Mexico. We've got 2 people that are in Europe at the moment, people that are in Alberta, and then almost everybody else is in London and Sarnia, and Ofer and I are here in Toronto. So we're the outliers here in Toronto.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, thank you for the background. I think it's always cool to get a little bit of the history and a little bit of just kind of like because I find a lot of either CEOs or some of them aren't founders, some of them don't really care too much about what the company is doing. They just want to make sure it succeeds, but it's not. I don't know. It's not the same thing in my eyes. So I think it's cool to see, and it's as an investor, I know that it's definitely a green flag rather than a red flag. So.
Yeah. Well, I said the passion in our C-suite. I'd be remiss if I didn't just mention that we've brought on Gene Kamek, who's our COO. He's coming to us from Siemens. Lots of experience, and he and Mark had worked together in the past. The synergy between Mark, Ofer, Gene, and then more recently we've also brought in Mina Bachet, who's our CFO. I think that everybody has a passion for bringing this technology to market.
Mainstream.
The opportunity for it to be disruptive is everybody's excited about that. And, I didn't mention Houston, but Gene and Mark are both located in Houston. So a company that has got resources all over the place. We've really embraced this idea of being a hybrid work environment, and that was pretty much forced upon everybody else during COVID.
Yeah.
But, we're embracing it as we can be an international company and build teams like places like London and Sarnia.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, Abe, that wraps it up for me. I think this interview was nice, concise, and informative. So thank you so much for joining us today. We'll have you on again, I'm sure, in maybe early 2023 or something when an update is due. And thank you for joining us, and have a great weekend. Take it easy.
Thank you very much. And thank you, everyone, for following the work that we're doing at Aduro. And if you have questions, certainly send them in the chat, send them to Jay, send them to me.
So just actually one more thing. If you do have questions, where can they reach you?
Personally, I'm at ADYCK at AduroCleanTech.com. That's Abe Dyck. And then if it's an investor question, IR at AduroCleanTech.com.
Fantastic.
All of those come to me. I can respond to those fairly quickly.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.
All right. Have a good afternoon.